As soon as I was done with Dolores' training, I headed to the first terrace. Spring had stirred the terrace awake. The shears walked lazily, the Hanzira bustled about, and the scent of blossoms mingled with good old decay. I passed mossy trees with drooping branches until I spotted a shabby old tap house, tucked away beneath the trunks. At a cracked window, I peered inside. Shadows cloaked the room inside, broken only by the flicker of a sickly green lantern. In the back of the room, I caught a glimpse of Dren, sitting hunched over a table. One hand gripped a tankard, the other pressed into his temple, kneading at some unseen ache. The other Hanzira seemed to give him a wide berth, glancing his way like one recoils from something rotting by the roadside. I walked over to the doorway and stopped for a moment, hesitating, torn between turning back and the fears that had driven me here. Squaring my shoulders, I stepped inside. The tap house smelled of old brew and rotting kelp. Conversations hushed as a dozen eyes turned to me, their expressions shifting from surprise to mild reverence. I realized they probably weren't used to seeing women down here. The lowest terrace of the Forbidden Temple was theirs. This tap house, theirs. It was their domain, a stark contrast to the sacred halls and gardens higher up in the monastery. And yet, as they noticed me, their expressions softened. A few murmured, "Meshayesh," an honorific for their female superiors. Their gazes didn't linger long, returning to their drinks and murmured conversations, though a few stole curious glances as if I were some odd creature that had wandered in from the woods. Amber panels lined the walls, preserving giant bugs and centipedes frozen mid-crawl. Webs of seaweed hung from the beams in the ceiling, and behind the bar, an octopus-like creature clung to a barrel, shifting its tentacles lazily as the barkeep poured a greenish sludge into a decanter. Around the bar, patrons slurped slick noodles, the oil and water splattering about their lips. Dren sat alone in the back, his mask covering the upper half of his face, just as I remembered. I lingered before forcing myself forward. As I approached, his fog eyes drifted toward me, recognition sparking in their depths. A crooked smile twisted the scarred mouth beneath his half-mask, and he raised a hand, gesturing to the seat across from him. A dark amusement lit his gaze.
"Emilia Valavenhugel,"
he said, slurring his words.
"As I live and breathe."
"Dren Ariseth," I said, still standing.
"I see you're carrying steel now,"
he noted, nodding toward my katana. "Just in case I have to kill you." He laughed, a deep, painful sound that rattled in his chest before falling into a coughing fit.
"And I would deserve it, wouldn't I, for dragging you to this foul place?"
I didn't answer.
"You look different. Better."
"You look worse."
"I should hope so. Wouldn't want to get too handsome now, would we?"
"What are you doing here? And how did you even get here? The lake. It's endless."
"Not quite. Takes a bit of know-how, but once you learn, rowing across the endless waters is as easy as driving a cart across the ash wastes."
"And why are you here?"
"Didn't the illustrious wielder of the Fang tell you? I live here. I'm her #1 henchman. It's rare for a Hanseer to handle combat, but I do. I take care of the dirty work the wardens are too pristine to touch."
Like kidnapping teenage girls?
"Exactly. One of my many talents. Admittedly, I was better in my youth, but you know what they say. With tired bones come great wisdom. You may consider me terribly wise, Messiash.
So, Azura summoned you here to do some kind of job.
Well, much like the flowers, I return every spring, brightening up this place with my beauty. Unlike those pesky things, however, I usually head out again come summer, with a list of tasks signed by Her Arch-Magnificency herself.
So, you're here on holiday?
Cheers.
I slid into the seat across from him, ignoring the faint stir among the other Hanzira as they returned to their meals. Dren grabbed his tankard and chugged the last of his brew before flicking his fingers toward the bar. The barkeep nodded, finishing up with a mug he'd been cleaning before coming over with a large decanter filled with greenish liquid. He refilled Dren's tankard before turning around to leave. "Wait," I said to the barkeep, in his own language. "Have you got any wine?"
Wine?
He looked at me, perplexed. "Red wine." The barkeep's confusion deepened, and Dren chuckled, a painful rasping sound. I turned to him.
You're among the Hanzira now, Messiash. Not the wardens. If you're thirsty, you drink lake water. If you want to drown your sorrows, you drink this swill.
He waved his tankard under his nose before taking a hearty gulp, grimacing as he swallowed.
I doubt you'll enjoy it, Messiash.
The barkeep added. "What is it?" He shrugged.
We just call it swill.
"Fine. Give me a cup." The barkeep went to fetch one, and I took a moment to study Dren. Like I'd told him, he looked even worse than the last time I'd seen him. His face, broken, his eyes, barely eyes at all. His expression was tired. No, it was ravaged from the years he'd endured. Whatever jobs Azura had him doing out in the Ashland, they were clearly taking their toll. I remembered what that soldier at Fort Schultz had called him. Corpse elf. Back in Gratzreich, we had a few summer elves, direct descendants of the elves, who'd ruled the world in ages past, before the age of the Witch Kings. Most of them lived in Orotria, according to Father. I'd also heard of winter elves, long gone, who'd once ruled the lands across the Sea of Cries, and Maya elves, antlered heathens who inhabited the wilderness of No Man's Land, south of Loch Lalesh. But corpse elves? That was a new one. Back in Blotseth, I'd wanted to ask about his grotesque appearance, but recoiled from the thought of speaking to him. This time, however, I had no such reservations. "Why do you look so dreadfully hideous?" I asked, bluntly. He let out a gravelly laugh, catching the attention of a few nearby patrons.
Come now, Messiash. We can't all have a mug as neat as yours.
"I'm serious. What are you?"
I'm an ash elf Hanzir, like all the other sorry sods down here.
You don't look it.
Nor does the ruin resemble a temple, but it's still a temple.
No. A ruin is a ruin. He paused, taking another long pull from his tankard, his movements a little slower than before.
In that case, I'm a corpse elf.
And what is that exactly? How did you become ruined?
It's an unpleasant story.
Worse than being bound and gagged, shipped off to God's knows where, and having your eye cut out while Demora pinned you down to a table?
Far worse.
His face twisted, shadows deepening in his eyes. The barkeep returned with my cup of swill, and Dren was already signalling for another refill, his hand wavering slightly as he lifted his empty tankard.
How about I just leave you with the whole decanter, Zero?
The barkeep said, arching a brow.
Sounds good to me,
Dren replied. The barkeep fetched the decanter, placing it on our table.
Just don't forget to pay before you pass out. Where's your sense of enterprise?
Dren said, grinning.
If you wait till I do pass out, you can sift through my pockets and rob me blind.
The barkeep shook his head, unimpressed.
Worry not,
Dren said.
Can't you tell I'm a Hansier of means? I'll pay you later, hero.
The barkeep walked away, muttering something under his breath. Dren raised his tankard with a wobbling hand, spilling a little as he clinked it against my cup.
To our reunion, sires,
he proclaimed, his voice a little too loud. I raised my cup and took a sip, immediately understanding why they call it swill. The taste was foul, bordering on revolting. The consistency somehow both too thick and too thin. But I forced it down, determined not to grimace.
Impressive,
Dren said, leaning in as if he was sharing a secret.
If Azura had to drink this shit, she'd abandon her whole philosophy of growth through suffering in an instant.
He laughed, yet there was no mirth in it. He raised his tankard and swallowed another mouthful.
So, to what do I owe the pleasure? Honestly, I didn't expect to see you down here. As you can tell, we're not exactly drowning in female company down here by the water. Even I, with my oh-so-special clearance, am only allowed on the first 3 terraces.
I came to ask you something, I said, taking another sip of swill. I figured this conversation might go smoother with a little courage in my bloodstream. Dren tilted his head, his gaze swaying as he tried to focus on me. Back in the ash wastes, you said I wasn't your captive, that I was free to kill you, to run away, and so on, but that you were likewise free to stop me. You said you don't do things the Veneran way at the Forbidden Temple, that the gods you serve are greater. I asked what you were babbling about. You said you're told it's life itself. There's always a choice, you said. Everyone is free as a bird in Loch Lalesh, you said. At least, so it used to be. What did you mean by that?
What a memory you got, Messiah. It's almost frightening.
I remember every word like it was yesterday. Same goes for the filth you said to me at the tap house in Blotzev. He flinched, and a shadow of something unpleasant twisted beneath his drunk exterior. Clearly, he remembered that too.
Well, I don't know what to say.
Just tell me what you meant by it. The things you said about free will, they echo the doctrines of Zeraven Durrell as interpreted by Azura. Therefore, I find it most curious that you, her humble servant, would say that freedom here is a thing of the past. My words seemed to hit a nerve. Dren twisted in his seat, biting his lips and tracing circles on the table with his tankard. Come on, Dren. What's wrong? Tell me. You owe me that much. His fingers tightened around his tankard, knuckles whitening as he clamped his jaw shut. His eyes flicked away, settling somewhere in the dim shadows, refusing to meet my gaze. A muscle twitched in his cheek as his grip slackened, and then tightened again. For a moment, he looked like he was about to say something, but he stopped, shaking his head slightly, as though wrestling down the words. What is it? He leaned forward, his whole frame tense. When he finally spoke, his voice came out as a low, venomous hiss, each word forced through clenched teeth, so faint I had to strain to hear.
Sora doesn't give a fuck about the teachings of Zeraven Durrell.
The words were barely audible, but they hit me like a wall. What?
Did I stutter?
He glared at me, then twisted his face into a grimace and took another large sip.
There was a war, you know. But Ashura... you don't care. Why would you? Your father.
I squinted. What about my father?
Najira was a hero, not a bloody traitor. Damn me if someone hears me say that. Don't tell anyone, all right? The damn witch. She's the traitor, not Najira.
I don't follow.
Ever since Ashura took this land, it's been downhill. She and her veiled council, they claim they're the true rulers of Lok Lalesh, and they're protecting the Ash Elves from your bloody empire. Lies. All of it.
So the council isn't in charge, you say?
Oh, they're in charge, all right. At least, in some ways. But that they have the interests of the Ash Elves at heart? Not a chance.
What do you mean?
The council, it's just all lies, you understand? Lies upon lies, betrayal and abandonment. You want to know what happened to me? How I was ruined? What Ashura let happen to a chief assassin? You couldn't take it. The fucking pain. The years of pain.
His voice remained low, barely more than a whisper. Swill foamed at the edges of his gashed lips, leaking like poison.
I've been all over Lok Lalesh. I've seen the blood and the misery. And what does Ashura do to help? Nothing. 30 years ago, the Imperial Armada left the land in ruins. Chaos everywhere. Reavers and thieves and cultists doing whatever the fuck they wanted. They took me, you know.
Who took you? He didn't answer, just clenched his eyes tight and continued through gritted teeth, as though reliving the memory of some unbearable nightmare.
You can't begin to imagine the pain they put me through. The sheer bloody agony. After I'd endured what felt like a lifetime of it, they wanted me to guess how long they'd been at it. The twisted sadists. Guess how long, they said. Don't be shy, give it a stab.
I don't know.
1 week. 1 bloody week. And then they kept at it. For years they kept at it. And Ashura, the so-called fate-breakers chosen of ours, I was her #1 man in the field, sent to clean up her mess, promised protection, and yet, when I was caught, she didn't lift a finger to pull me out of that hellhole.
Something clenched inside me. I didn't understand half of the things he was going on about, but it didn't matter. The anger in his voice, the pain, the hatred. It was all the fuel my old fears needed to flare up again.
Everything she says is a lie,
Dren hissed.
You're her pupil these days, I take it. Meant to become her successor upon her death, if you so choose.
He spat on the floorboards.
Don't believe a word of it. You have no way of knowing what she hides in that icy void where her heart should be.
He lifted his tankard to his broken mouth, realizing it was empty, and threw it across the room. The other Hanzira turned to us. The barkeep looked up from behind the bar. I don't think they'd heard any of what he'd said about Ashura, but now we had their full attention. Dren looked around, tears in his eyes, before twisting his lips into a terrible smile.
Fret not, O my brothers. Drink and be merry. For what could be better than a lifetime of service to this venerable forbidden temple? Cheers!
Some of the Hanzira looked confused, but a few raised their cups with half-hearted grins.
Barkeep, a round for everyone. On me.
While the barkeep moved through the room, filling cups with swill, Dren grew silent. He slumped in his chair, staring vacantly ahead, as though he were looking at something beyond the walls of the tap house, beyond the temple itself. A stillness had settled over him, his earlier rage curdling into something raw and hollow, a darkness that seemed to close in around him like a shroud. I didn't know what to say. This conversation had shaken me to my core, reawakening fears I'd spent months trying to bury. If this had happened back in winter, when my doubts about Azura had consumed my every thought, Dren's words might have come as a strange comfort. I might have welcomed them as validation, glad that someone else could see through her, that someone else dared to question the High Priestess who held such power over us all. But now, after I'd worked so hard to drown those suspicions in routine and training and purpose, it felt like some sick joke. Like someone had ripped open an old wound, tearing through the fragile piece I'd managed to build. Now I knew, in my heart of hearts, that the next 4 months here would be more terrifying than anything I'd endured so far. I rose to leave, hoping to slip out quietly before Dren said anything else. But as I turned, he stirred, as though remembering something.
Hold on.
He slurred.
Almost forgot. This is for you.
He reached into his coat, clumsily patting down his pockets before pulling out a sealed envelope. The paper was wrinkled and worn, the edges stained with ash. He held it out to me, squinting slightly, as if struggling to focus. I took the envelope, puzzled. My name was sprawled across the front in a hand I recognized immediately. Father. My heart turned cold. I stared down at my name, written in thin, elegant strokes.
A hooded man gave it to me on the docks of Blooddeath a few weeks ago.
Dren slurred, rubbing his eyes as if to shake off his drunken haze. I managed a nod of thanks, though I could barely look at him as I left the tap house, clutching the letter so tightly my knuckles turned white. Outside, twilight had fallen, the sky a deep, bruised purple. The air was thick with humidity, the scent of rot mingling with blossoms. Shadows lay heavy under the trees, and the winding paths seemed to stretch on endlessly in the fading light. Near the tables where the demoral feast had taken place 5 months ago, I paused, trying to steady myself. My hands shook as I broke the seal on the envelope and pulled out a single piece of paper. I unfolded it, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear my own breath. There, in Father's handwriting, were only 2 words. Forgive me.